Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video.
But before we get started, go ahead and subscribe to this channel and check out our backlog of great content for you guys. And then also consider hitting this join button, becoming a channel member today. You get all kinds of perks and things like that. And if this video was a blessing to you, don't forget to click the link below and make a donation in the PayPal. God bless you, friend, and we appreciate you. May God speak to your heart during this video.
This is heresy.
All right, so the bow tie preacher says, what advice would you give a pulpit committee in searching for a pastor?
Ooh, that's a good
Oh,
one.
boy, that's a real good
I
question.
know a couple of churches going through that right now.
Yep, I do too. And it's very important that that you pick the right guy. It's as important as marrying the right girl, because if you get the wrong one, you're gonna have to either go through a terrible divorce, or you're going to have to endure a lot of terrible, long-lasting suffering, and that is not good. So, a couple things I would look for with searching for a pastor. Number one, y'all need to reach out. Like if I'm speaking to a pulpit committee or whatever. Number one, y'all need to reach out to a few local preachers, maybe preachers that come preach through that church through the year. And ask them if they can give you some recommendations, and don't just start don't put out on the internet, hey, we're looking for a pastor. Anybody got, if you want to apply for the job, email us at, jimmybillbob@gmail.com. And, you don't do that. Try to keep it in-house, in-network as much as you can. Don't put an ad in the newspaper saying, hey, we need a preacher over here. That is the worst thing you could do. You will attract woodworks. Yeah, you'll attract some long-haired moron. And then also make sure that you guys, as a pulpit committee, know and believe the qualifications of a bishop put out in 1 Timothy chapter 3. Make sure you know what that is, and make sure that you're following that. I mean, I'll go through them right here with you. It's let's see here, 1 Timothy chapter 3. And verse number 1, man desire the office of bishop, he's got to be blameless, husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach, not given to wine, no striker, not greedy of filthy lucre. He's got to be patient, not a brawler, not covetous, one that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection to all gravity, not a novice, lest be lifted up with pride to follow the condemnation of the devil. He must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall into reproach and snare of the devil. Make sure that this man is in line with these qualifications. As a matter of fact, I made a post about this the other day on Facebook. I'm going to pull it up now that this guy has, this brother Keeter here has provoked my thinking. It is very important that the churches understand this. If they don't, they're going to be you're going to attract a crazy, and you're going to ruin a generation of people at your church, and it's not going to be good. So here it is. This is my personal Facebook page. I want to show you guys this. All right, New Testament qualification for a bishop. They are by divine design. Any man that despises, questions, or mocks them are ultimately arguing with God himself and put them there. They are listed from 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1. Blameless, husband of one wife, having faithful children, not self-willed, not soon angry, not given to wine, no striker, not given to filthy lucre, lover of hospitality, lover of good men, sober, just, holy, temperate, holds fast the faithful word as he hath been taught. Meaning this, that if he like decides that 10 years into his ministry that he wants to change Bible versions, he needs to give up his ordination certificate. Mm-hmm. If he decides 10 years into his ministry that he is a charismatic, he needs to give up his ordination certificate. If he believes that he wants to go start baptizing babies and be reformed, he needs to give up his ordination certificate. So that's a fact. And vigilant, of good behavior, apt to teach, patient, not covetous, one that ruleth well his own house, not a novice, and must have a good report. Any man that is given an ecclesiastical office who does not meet these qualifications should not take the office. I think these plain teachings of the Bible should be taken into serious consideration for the church who is looking for a pastor and for the men who are already in the ministry. I often go over them to evaluate myself. If any man is found with a character that is wildly out of line with these qualifications, he should not occupy the office. Now, the problem with that And the problem with this whole deal is that all of these pulpit committees are usually they're good men who are businessmen who think and run the church as a business. And so what they're looking for is some young, chiseled CEO to lead them to the promised land of prosperity, when that is not how the church operates. They try to impose the rules of secular business and success in the business place and overlap them onto the local church, and then they wonder why their kids are listening to Stephen Furtick 2 years later. Okay, you're asking for trouble. You need to believe God's holy word as described by God himself and look for a man that meets this criteria right there, and not for somebody who is suave and speaks well and, he sings good and whatever. You might be voting a devil into your church if you're not careful. So, that being said, number one, they need to find some local preachers or preachers that have preached in the church every year that they can rely on. Number two, they need to make sure that they are up to speed themselves on the qualifications of a bishop and knowing what they are themselves. And then number three, they need to do a background check and a credit check on these people. That I got pushed back on that the other day.
Isn't that funny? How dare you?
Okay, let me tell you this. Okay, you pulpit committee people, listen to me. I'm telling you this because I love you, and you need to hear this. Somebody's got to say this at some point in the world. Okay, you need to ask if this man that you're candidating as a pastor is a Freemason. Just straight up ask the man, "Are you a Freemason, sir?" And if he is, he don't need to be your pastor. Because you'd be shocked how many of these idiots are Freemasons and don't even see any problem with it. You're crazy. Okay, number two, you need to sit down and say, "Sir, give me your Social Security number. I'm going to run your credit." And go see what that says. Now, look, I'm going to promise you something, okay? I was in car sales for a little while when I was in Bible college. And they told me if there was the 3 P's of bad credit, Brother Justin. Did I ever tell you about that?
No.
The 3 P's of bad credit. And what they were trying to tell us was, as car salesmen, was that if you dealt with any of these 3 people, get rid of them because you're not going to be able to buy a car. Or they're not going to be able to buy a car. They have bad credit. It was plumbers, painters, and preachers. And they said if a plumber or a painter or a preacher walks on the lot, you may as well get rid of him. He ain't got no credit. If you find a guy, and I don't care if you get mad or not. I don't care if people like it, lump it, or whatever. But if a guy walks into your church and he's got a 480 credit score, do not vote that man as your pastor. You're asking for trouble. You're asking for huge trouble with that, because wow. You're gonna be in a big mess. Okay. Number two, run a background check on the guy. Okay, credit check and a background check. Okay, there are men in the ministry, Brother Justin, that I know. I know and I don't have anything to do with them, but I know for a fact that 10 years ago they got busted for a sexual assault on a woman, and they got a slap on the wrist legally because they made a plea deal, didn't have to register as a sex offender, and then they just moved across the country and tried to get right back in the ministry. I know those guys. I have seen these guys. I have met them. I don't have anything to do with them. But a church, if they had just run a background check on that, they would not have had this man in it as their pastor.
Yeah.
And normally when a guy does that, he'll do it again.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. So that being said, what did I say so far? Number one, ask around a few preachers that you know and trust and you think they've got the best interests of the church in heart. Ask them what they think. Ask them for candidates. Ask them for suggestions. Number two, make sure you're up to speed yourself on the qualifications of a bishop and make sure you know that. Okay. Number three, do background checks on these guys. Do a credit check. Do a criminal background check. And check the references.
Previous church, why did they leave?
Yeah, call the deacon board at the previous church and say, "I want to know the truth. Tell me everything." even if it's ugly. I want you to tell me everything. Stalk the people on Facebook who went to that church before.
You can learn a lot of stuff on Facebook.
Yeah, stalk their Facebook real hard. Look it up.
Yeah.
Look up their wife, and if there's a woman, if that pastor's wife has got pictures of her in a tank top with a beer in her hand on Facebook, you better know that. That's oddly specific because I know scenarios like you better find that out.
Yeah.
Before you call that man to be your pastor. And someone said Laura Leah guy on YouTube got fired from a ministry and had his record expunged. That's interesting. Yeah, now usually some of these fallen preachers find their way onto YouTube, and there's one or two that I know of right now that I don't think need to be saying what they're saying. And Lost in My Backyard says my dad was a plumber and pipe fitter and independent Baptist preacher. Yeah, man. But those are basically three things there, Brother Bowtie Preacher. Thank you very much for that. What would you add to that, Brother Justin? What else?
I would just stress on there's a reason why they left the previous church.
Yeah, find that out.
It may not always be bad, but there's a reason why they're not a pastor somewhere. Mm-hmm. Now, there are some that have been trained up and now they're ready to go out and be a pastor. That's different, but definitely, and don't be afraid to ask the doctrinal questions. What do they believe?
Yeah.
I personally was a part of one, not in the committee, but a part of the church that, he actually lied about what he believed in, but it split the church. He came out later believing in a different thing, just stuff like that, and it was just because a recommendation was given, people just kind of blinded, like, yeah, that's good enough, but they didn't do a little more homework. Like you said, look at it, ask the questions. There's a reason why they're not preaching somewhere. Maybe they're new, maybe they're ready to preach somewhere else, but just ask the questions.
Yeah.
Ask the previous church. Ask, like you said, Facebook will just show everything.
It'll
what
show
they post.
everything.
People they're posting, pastors or sermons they're posting. Is it Reformed? Is it Calvinistic theology? Is it going against your theology at your churches? It's easy to pick up on that stuff. So yeah, that's all I would say. Just do your homework.
Yeah. Well, and it says right there, verse number 7, moreover, he must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall into the reproach and snare of the devil. If you have the testimony in the community that you're a scoundrel preacher, you don't need to be a pastor.
Yep.
You just don't need to be a pastor.
Be a servant in the church and serve some other capacity.
Yeah, that's it. You need to go on. You need to go do something else with your life. So I think that's a good solid set of things there. So I think we nailed that one.